7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first action is to put the allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we do the roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Lambert?
Present.
Councilmember Weiss?
Here.
Councilmember Whitmer?
Here.
Vice Mayor Lewis?
Here.
Mayor DeGolia?
Here. And the first order of business is an introduction and oath of office. But I want to just say before we start that we are a little bit challenged in our technology tonight because we normally have microphones all around the stations up here, and the software didn't work today, so we have an omnidirectional mic, so we're going to talk louder than normal so that our voices get picked up on the recording. Okay, and so this is the chief.
Mayor and members of the council, it's my distinct pleasure this evening to introduce the two newest employees of the town of Atherton. So Monica and Officer Carpenter, would you please come forward? So I thought I'd start out by giving you a little brief biographical summary on each one of these fine individuals. Monica Diaz grew up in the Central Valley with her three brothers and went to school there. She's married to Gabriel, who's in the audience here. They've been married for 5 years. They have 3 dogs, and that fills the requirement for children for them. And so they're pretty excited about that. Monica first got interested in the public sector when she took an internship as a junior in high school with the city of Madera. And during that time, they liked her so much, they offered her a part-time job as a high school student, and then she would go to the finance department for the city of Madera after school and work there. Well, you can kind of imagine what happened after that. They liked her so much, they actually gave her a full-time job with the city of Madera. And she's held several positions with the city of Madera with increasing responsibility. And recently, when we, the council, adopted the position for a code enforcement officer, as you know, we did a significant search, went through a lot of applications, and Monica clearly came up on the top of the best of that group as a code enforcement officer with the city of Madera. So we're really fortunate to have her here, and I think she's going to do an outstanding job for the town of Atherton. I have Officer Todd Carpenter. He grew up in the San Jose area, went to school, and attended West Valley Junior College, where he obtained an associate arts degree in criminal justice. After college, he joined the U.S. Army in the mid-1980s and served with the 3rd Armored Division in Germany. After being honorably discharged from the military, he joined the San Jose Police Department, where he worked in a variety of assignments like patrol and special assignments like narcotics and SWAT. He was promoted to sergeant with the city of San Jose, and then was transferred to their traffic division, where he rode motorcycles and supervised a traffic enforcement bureau. So we're very, very fortunate to have Todd here and look forward to him going through the break-in period and then getting up on a motorcycle and working traffic problems throughout the town. So at this time, I'd like to administer the oath of office to both of you. If you'd please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Todd Carpenter,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation, purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
on which I'm about to enter.
So congratulations. All right, thank you very much. Good luck.
Welcome to both of you. And Chief, I think we're just about at our full complement of your department, maybe missing one or two.
We have 2 vacancies and 2 people in backgrounds for those vacancies, so if everything goes well, it'll be the first time in over a decade that the department has been at full strength.
That's
Amazing.
awesome.
Nice job.
So it's a long time coming.
Thank you, thank you. It's
Great.
hard work.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comments, and this portion of the meeting is reserved for public to comment on issues that are not on the agenda tonight. Does anyone have a comment? Wally?
I am Walter Sleeth, and I live on 227 Catalpa Avenue Drive, I guess it is. And I'm sure you are aware of my continuing concern about the bleachers in the park. I'm not going to go back to anything I've said before. I want to request at this point in time that the council members involve themselves in the finalization of this stadium. Now is the time to look at it carefully, the way it's going to be painted, and the finishing touches on it, to make sure that it does fit in to the park as a whole. Just because there's a cupola on top is not the complete answer. Many people that I am talking to are surprised at how big it is. So I think it's very important that in proceeding with this, you go back and you see whether there's a way to make sure the paint color, that it kind of disappears when you're looking from the road rather than being something that you're going to see. So that's my plea to you, and I leave it to the 5 of you to see whether you can make sure you don't have people, you'll be less likely to have people complaining after the fact if you make this effort now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? No. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You have the written report in front of you, and staff's here to answer any questions you might have. You might notice that the police department report has a lot more graphics in it in an attempt to get that information out there, and it's also an opportunity for the community to recognize what information is available on the town's website through Citizen RIMS, because that's where all the graphics came from. In addition, during one-on-one with council members, it was noted that what was the measure of success for the giant orange sign in the park over the last weekend, brilliantly colored, brilliantly lit, that said, put your dogs on a leash, leash law, there's a fine, etc. The measure of success was there were no dogs off their leash in the park for the entire weekend. Not that we can put that sign out there every weekend, but it was an excellent idea, came through the police department, and whoever took the initiative to do that did a great job. Just wanted to note that as well.
Great.
But they've returned off leash.
They have returned signs off.
Since the sign is up, turned off.
That's interesting. I guess something to consider. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the.
Can I make a comment about this?
Of course.
Yes. So, in your city manager's report, you did indicate that, Caltrain is, starting to survey and identify the trees along the right-of-ways,
Yes.
and that they are, going to keep us in the loop as to when and why, they are labeling some trees. Has that been done? Will we receive a list? Will they give us a complete, inventory or survey when it's done, and do we know when they are coming into our area?
We will know when they are. They're not here yet, but they will be surveying all of the trees, and that's the intent. At this point, it's just a survey of those trees, and then they'll go back and they'll work with us, specifically our arborists, to identify which trees might be removed which trees might be pruned and why.
Would there be any possibility at all, if the trees are going to be removed, that they could be removed such that they could be replanted elsewhere?
Certainly, could be part of the conversation
And with
with
Caltrain,
Caltrain.
providing the funds for that?
I don't know how that would work out, but it's certainly something that's part of the conversation. I know that with the litigation, as resulting from the EIR, tree pruning and tree removal is a certain issue that was brought up during that, so that could be an evolution.
It's on hold during the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be on hold during the lawsuit, okay. And then just another comment about, the report. It just seems like every month your report gets better and better, you know, with the addition of the, increased graphics from the police department and, the, graphs that the, building and safety have provided, and, it just gets better and better, so thank you for all the information.
Any other comments on the report? Gary?
I just want to make one comment to the chief, and it's in the city manager's report.
And remember, you need to talk up for this one.
I am. I follow directions well. All right, I just wanted to say thank you to the great bit of police work that you guys did related to the Mesa Court case and getting the 2 burglary suspects in custody on that. I think that my understanding is related to how your staff and your people worked. Tremendous, good job, and you know, thank you from the residents in the western section of Atherton. So. Great.
One comment I have, I also, I thought that the inclusion of the construction activity suite that you had is very good. I got 2 or 3 comments this week from people who were upset by subcontractors parking in the wrong place, and one guy who put rocks out in the right of way to stop that and got a code enforcement request to remove them, and said that he would, but you know, he was directed to give you a call if there's a problem, and I think that this construction activity sweep is very important, particularly at the level of heightened construction that we have in the town.
Agreed. Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, hearing no other comments, we will move forward. The next item is the consent calendar, and the city manager would like to make a statement.
Just a couple of comments on item number 8, the January 21st minutes reflect that we actually adopted the December 17th minutes, which we didn't, we pulled from the agenda in January, so we'll correct the minutes there. And also there's a report out of closed session on January 21st that didn't accurately report that Councilmember Lempers was recused from that closed session conversation, so that's why he wasn't in attendance. And then item number 15 is the adoption of the Atherton Now Grant Agreement and authorization for city manager to execute. As you know, you've got a most recent copy of that agreement in front of you this evening with the changes that the city attorney worked with the Atherton Now law firm to address the concerns raised by staff and the council. There may also be some additional comments from a member of the council that we could also put into that agreement. If you have any of those this evening, just briefly, we can direct the city attorney, he can do so. There's been some one-on-one conversations for minor adjustments, which the city attorney can comment on if you like.
So I think that we're at a point where I think the bones of the agreement are correct, and if there's any ambiguities, we can clarify those with a cover letter to the other side saying, this is our understanding of the intent and what's going to happen. So I'm already on top of that, and we'll be drafting that letter tomorrow.
That's all my comment.
Okay, great. Does any member of the, did you have a comment?
I did a question, actually.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure, when we say the bones are correct, what exactly are we approve? If we act to approve, what are we doing? What are we approving?
The agreement that has been revised 2 or 3 times now, the one that's on your in front of your
Right.
materials tonight, is the agreement that we believe is appropriate and final, ready to go forward and be signed. The only purpose of clarifying it is because it's been pointed out to me that 1 or 2 of the terms might be ambiguous, and since they're ruled against the drafter, that's them, it'd be fair and appropriate for us to explain what those clarifications are. And frankly, I don't think there's a problem, because that's what everybody's always intended all the way along. There's nothing new or no surprises. It's just that we thought it'd be appropriate to say, you know, for instance, what does the term grant mean? Well, grant's a whole bunch of individual donations, but as far as we're concerned, it means each and every individual one of those, so it's not an aggregate that they pass through to us. If they were to ever claw something back, it might be $1,000 grant they claw back instead of, you know, if that was attached to $1 million grant.
No, I understand. My question is, this is the final document, no more, it's not subject to any further revisions.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
This is a time where anyone from the public could choose to pull an item from the consent calendar. Does anybody wish to do that? No?
I have a question. Are we discussing the master plan tonight and making final approval
The master for
for
which,
Atherton?
no,
That's not on the agenda.
no.
Okay, and neither is the bike path?
No,
No,
or master
we-
plans.
The bike path master plan was approved.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. Well, thank you,
But,
and
yeah.
see you when master plan's on.
Okay. Does anyone on the council wish to pull anything from the consent calendar?
I'd like to just make a comment on 11,
Great.
which is the
Go ahead.
community choice aggregation. I've got no issue with submitting the documentation. I think that when we move forward, though, we need to seriously consider, giving everybody a choice is a good idea, but, it's a big step getting into the utility business. I've lived in communities that the city actually was in the utility business, and it can become problematic and very divisive. So I spoke with the city manager with regards to it, and I fully understand that, which is why I'm only making the comment. But giving the data does not bind us to move forward. But
Right.
I mean, it's a good idea to get involved and see what it might bring. But I think we should have a study session on getting into that business when we finally get there, and that would be my recommendation.
I'll just make a comment.
Please.
There has been several opportunities to see the presentation that has been given, not only to CTAG, but it was at the Council of Cities, at the January meeting, and then there were 2 workshops that were availed.
One in
that-
Redwood City Council Chambers.
Right, and so, you know, I would highly recommend that the next time one of those come up, that you might hear it, because it's very compelling, and I agree, it's risky, and it's not to be entered into lightly, and it would never be entered into lightly. But that's, the County of San Mateo is wanting to at least investigate it, and this is kind of the first step of giving the information to the consultants to then, you know, start putting some form around how we would go about doing that.
Yeah, it was a good presentation, and you know, George lives in Marin, where
Yeah.
they refer to it, and he and I spoke about the choices that he has, and so.
And
I'm not-
they would be willing to come to our council meeting
That'd be
and
a
give
good
a
idea.
presentation for the public. And I think that might be something that we might want to do
Yeah.
for.
And maybe
the-
do it at a study session.
At a
Where
study
people
session.
can really comment on it.
Exactly, yeah.
I think it's a
something
good
like
idea.
that. And, or have a, you know, a public meeting outreach so that once we kind of get further.
I don't think that the town is the people, the residents are very aware of what this
No.
involves.
Mm-mm.
And the experience from my review of Marin and Sonoma is that there's a substantial decrease in the electricity rates that people are paying as a result of this. Basically, the entire county aggregates their purchases, so they get a purchase price for electricity at a lower price. And there are some options that are provided in Marin for renewable energy. It's pretty interesting, so.
It is. And the fact is that every resident has the choice to opt in, or opt out, I should say, opt out. And so it's clearly their choice. They don't have to. They can keep everything the way it is now. So, that's fine.
Right.
Comments?
That's it, that was my
Okay.
comment on the whole thing.
I move that we approve the.
I'll second. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that is moving us on to item 17, which is committee appointments and possible interviews. Is that on you?
Yes, as you're aware, singular vacancy transportation and one application for the rail committee. And just as a sidebar, we'll be doing the annual recruitment mid-March, so we'll advertise for EDC and the rest of the vacancies. I know that James McLaughlin is in the audience. I'm not sure if Ellen Jameson posted it. Well,
Great.
yeah.
Great.
That concludes my report.
Okay. I don't know what other, I'd love to hear you introduce yourself and why you're interested in the position. You have a great resume, very qualified, and I'm very happy, but please come up and let us know why you're interested in this.
I'm a fairly new resident to Atherton, and I think it's a very well-run city. I have to say, the contact I've had with the police department, where I was actually able to go over and drop off the key to my house, for safekeeping, was a new experience for me. I think it's a wonderful place to live. I think with my background and experience, I might be of some assistance to Chief Flint or the council as you address safety and operation issues on the streets and highways that traverse the town. I find myself retired now, so with great encouragement from my wife, I'm looking for new opportunities to fill my time. I look forward to working with town staff, the police department, and whatnot on issues that affect us all. I mean, I'm a resident, and I think that's one of those issues that cuts across all lines, affects everyone, and if I can help make things better, then I'd like to participate.
Great.
So thank you.
We asked
Any
them about-
questions?
No.
So you've moved from Arizona?
No, I worked for for NHTSA, the regional office in San Francisco.
Okay.
I moved from Napa to
Okay.
Atherton
Okay.
last year.
So where were you? I didn't read all the real fine print, but so you were a police officer in Napa then.
Well, I was the captain of the CHP area office in Napa.
Okay.
And prior to that, the captain of the El Centro office, Imperial County.
Mhm.
Perhaps some of you have been. It's usually traversed at high speed between San Diego and Phoenix late at night.
Don't know that area.
Don't go at high speed.
Yeah, we don't go at high speed, right?
And I did work, the CHP divides the state into 8 divisions. I worked here in the Golden Gate Division, which is the 9 Bay Area, encompasses the 9 Bay Area counties. Most of my responsibilities were in the North Bay, so I'm still learning the South Bay.
When did you move to the town?
In June of last year.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Yes.
welcome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
We, I can speak for everyone up here, that this is definitely participation in a nonprofit board.
Yes.
You get the same pay as all.
Nonprofit. Yeah.
Very good.
Traffic is definitely an issue.
So, shall we?
Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
Great, thank you very much.
Let's do them together. Ellen, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Ellen Jameson, and I'm also a relatively new resident in Atherton. I moved here 2.5 years ago upon getting married to someone who is a longtime resident of Atherton, and I've been involved with the town as the friend of somebody who is a resident, and now that I'm here, I'm happy to try to get a little bit more involved in the community. I see this as a wonderful opportunity for me to get to know people, get to know the town, and to embark on a public service effort. I've been very much interested in government from the start. My first job out of college was at the National Security Agency. It has nothing to do with rail. But I had always had an interest in public policy. That was sort of a foreign policy orientation, but I've been interested in local community activities. I'm on the board of Habitat for Humanity. I was the chair of Habitat Greater San Francisco for a couple of years. I'm about to roll off that term, and so this fits into the public service element of how I try to balance my time. Professionally, I'm a lawyer and real estate. I'm also involved in some real estate investments.
Great. Anybody have a question?
Could you just talk a minute about why rail, and in particular, you made a reference to, first I start saying thanks very much for your interest.
Oh, okay.
And welcome. And then
I thought you were going to ask me about the national security.
Oh, well, thanks.
But I can't. No,
Can't say-
I'm
can't
joking.
say.
I was going to say.
Well, you made reference to a balanced approach to modernization. I just wondered what that meant.
Well, what so, you know, rail, I'm interested in understanding the issues a little better. I've sort of seen it from the outside, and I do both appreciate the need for 21st century infrastructure. At the same time, I'm very concerned about how it impacts, you know, our community and the individuals here, and I'd like to understand it better and make sure all the interests are appropriately looked at.
Well, you will find yourself among some very opinionated, longtime residents from Atherton on the rail committee. And they have a great deal of information about it, so I think you'll find it really interesting.
I
And
hope
it
so.
definitely is a good way to meet people.
And it needs another lawyer.
I need another lawyer.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it overloaded with?
No,
lawyers?
no.
Oh.
But we have
Not
a
legal
lawyer
opinion.
left, right. Well, I don't know, a direct question would be her position on high-speed rail. You
That's
know,
okay.
do you,
That doesn't,
I'm open-minded. I want to understand it better, quite frankly.
Well, you will find some people with
I-
a great deal of expertise on that committee.
amazing expertise.
Yeah, I'm quite sure of that.
Yeah.
So I see it as a big learning opportunity for me.
Thank
Great.
you for
Thank
wanting
you.
to volunteer.
Do you live near the rail?
I live on, well, not bordering it, no.
Yeah, okay.
But-
But a
within
distance away.
500 feet?
More than 500
Yeah.
feet.
So I live on
not far.
Marymount Avenue, so not that far, but not that close.
Yeah, they redacted your address.
Yeah.
You can
Oh,
look
oh,
up in the
okay.
voter
Yeah.
reg, but,
Yeah, most people, usually when people come up and speak to us, they say their address.
Oh, okay, I thought you
but
had
yeah,
it.
no,
not
it
required,
got
no.
redacted.
Okay.
It's not.
That's the only reason I asked, is that if you write on the rails, then sometimes it causes a, conflict.
Oh, I understand, yeah.
Only
Right.
if she runs for
A lot
council.
of people say station lane. Everybody lives on station lane.
Okay.
I'm not on station lane, and I'm on rail, and I love all the input I get.
He lives up in the
Okay.
hills.
So we have a
Thank
real
you.
focus
Thank
to
you, Ellen.
move the meeting through in 2 hours. I'm looking for a motion.
Absolutely good idea.
I'll move to accept both candidates for transportation and rail.
And I'll second it.
Well,
All in favor?
sorry.
Okay,
Yay.
thank you very much.
I think, just aside, I think Teresa has a handbook that she typically gives to the new members, right?
I'll follow up with each applicant tomorrow,
Yeah,
next step.
a lot of reading material.
Great. Next item on the agenda is consideration of alternatives to address certain safety concerns on El Camino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The rest of the agenda is pretty much the Mike and Robert show down here to give the rest of the staff reports. I'm also here to help facilitate the conversation, but Mike's got this one for ECR.
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council. Over the past several years, much of the conversation with Caltrans regarding improving accessibility and safety along El Camino Real for bicyclists and pedestrians has centered around the reduction of travel lanes from 6 lanes to 4.
Yeah, Mike, can you keep going? I'll hand it back to you in a second.
However, it has also been acknowledged that this change would be very costly to study and implement. Working with Caltrans, the required technical analysis to evaluate the capacity impacts of lane reductions on ECR has been determined, and the town has received proposals from qualified engineering consultants to perform the required study. If results of this study supported proposed lane reductions, participation and agreement from a number of interested stakeholders would also be required. Since the time, cost, and outcomes associated with pursuing reducing travel lanes on El Camino Real are unknown, but presumably lengthy and costly, staff developed an alternative approach for City Council consideration to improve bicycle and pedestrian accessibility and safety. Staff believes the alternative approach discussed in your staff report provides more certainty in terms of cost and timing of improvements. The alternatives presented also provides the town with more certainty and control in terms of having the ability to implement physical improvements with immediate benefits for bicyclists and pedestrians, since the proposed construction of traffic control devices would only involve operational and funding agreements between the town and Caltrans. As described in your staff report, the alternative approach shifts focus from lane reductions on ECR to providing traffic control devices at the existing marked crosswalks at uncontrolled intersections. In other words, controlling existing uncontrolled crosswalk locations through the installation of traffic signals and hybrid pedestrian beacons. There are 5 existing crosswalks at uncontrolled intersections within the town. Those are located at Alejandra, Isabella, Stockbridge, Selby, and Almondral. Two of these existing crosswalk locations, Alejandra and Isabella, will be controlled with the installation of hybrid pedestrian beacons as part of a Caltrans pedestrian improvement project throughout San Mateo County. These 2 beacons will be funded totally by the state of California and is currently under design. And according to the current project schedule, we are anticipating that these 2 beacons would be operational around the spring of 2017. In addition to the hybrid pedestrian beacons at Alejandra and Isabella, the town could also fund an additional hybrid pedestrian beacon at Stockbridge. The estimated cost for this beacon would be approximately $300,000, and if approved by council, design could be started probably in 2 months. And we anticipate it could be under construction by the end of this calendar year. The 4th crosswalk, Selby Lane, meets criteria for installation of a traffic signal based upon a study performed by Caltrans several years ago. Based upon the number and types of vehicular collisions at this intersection, town staff agrees that a traffic signal is the appropriate traffic control device for this intersection. However, we also recognize and acknowledge resident concerns regarding increased traffic on Selby Lane as a result of this signal. Accordingly, we believe an important first step is to outreach and engage Selby residents in conversations regarding their issues and concerns. The goal of this outreach effort would be to reach and understand the consensus of all Selby Lane residents prior to determining specific recommendations for City Council consideration. The 5th crosswalk location is Almondral. Almondral is a residential street which tees into El Camino Real. Based upon land use and existing street locations, staff believes the potential for pedestrian activity at this crossing is the least of the 5 existing crossings. Based on this low pedestrian use, this crosswalk should be further studied for potential removal. However, another consideration is the existing fire station located on Almondral, which creates a potential for installation of a new traffic signal, which would improve fire safety and access for fire trucks exiting Almondral onto ECR. Over the past several weeks, staff has met with Caltrans, Menlo Park, San Mateo County, and Menlo Fire to share information which we are presenting this evening to you, and to get some initial feedback. From Caltrans, Caltrans is in agreement and supports the alternative approach. They also confirmed that for town-funded facilities, the town could be the lead agency in the delivery of those facilities. And also through our conversations with Caltrans, we were able to identify the process, timelines, and permit requirements for these proposed improvements. In our meeting with Menlo Park staff is also supportive of site-specific improvements as opposed to looking at lane reductions. As the council knows, the city of Menlo Park is also in the final stages actually of a corridor study that they've been working on for the last year. Particularly the areas in Menlo Park where El Camino Real is 2 lanes in each direction with parking. Currently, the study that they're doing is actually looking at 3 options for those 4-lane sections. One option is to remove parking and adding a 3rd travel lane. Another option is to remove parking and adding bike lanes. And the 3rd option that they're looking at is removing parking and adding a cycle track. And what a cycle track is, it's basically a Class 1 bike lane on the street. And the ones that I've seen, what it is they build medians that they could landscape that separates the travel lane from where this bike lane would be. And so that's the 3rd alternative that Menlo Park is considering. They are having their 3rd and final community workshop on their study actually tomorrow night, and Atherton staff will be attending that to just observe, to see what they're talking about. And they anticipate completing their study with recommendations to their city council in the April-May of 2015, so in a couple months. With regards to Menlo Fire, Menlo Fire supports a new signal at Almondral, and they clearly do not support any lane reductions on El Camino Real. So in summary, the purpose of the staff report and the reason staff developed this alternative approach was to provide City Council options to improve bike and pedestrian safety along and across El Camino Real. Although conversations with Caltrans have been productive and Caltrans has certainly been cooperative and helpful, the reality is sometimes the pace of change and actions are not aligned with the sense of urgency of the City Council and town residents. However, over the past several years, the town has definitely raised the awareness of Caltrans regarding the town's concerns, and I believe it's clear to Caltrans that improving accessibility and safety along El Camino Real is a top priority of the town and its residents. This has resulted in the installation of signing and striping improvements at the existing crosswalks, a more vigilant trimming of median landscaping to improve visibility for bicycles and pedestrian and vehicles, and most significantly, the inclusion of the 2 hybrid pedestrian beacons as part of their countywide enhancement project at Isabella and Alejandra. So one thing I think is important to note is that although the proposed improvements will certainly improve access and safety at the 5 existing crosswalk locations, it is still important to continue to find opportunities to take a complete streets approach along the entire ECR corridor within the town in terms of improving accessibility, mobility, efficiency, and safety while balancing and preserving the natural environment of the town of Atherton. So, as stated in your staff report, our recommendations is to provide feedback and direction to staff regarding alternatives presented in your staff report for improving bike and ped safety, provide direction, and also direction City Council can provide staff this evening also includes authorizing the funding and design of a new hybrid pedestrian beacon at Stockbridge Avenue, including the issuance of a request for proposal for engineering design, which is also included as part of your staff report. Authorizing staff to outreach Selby Avenue residents regarding the potential installation of a traffic signal. Move forward with the selection of an engineering consultant to perform the El Camino Real operational study, or provide direction to suspend work on the operation study. So that concludes staff presentation, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, so we will start with questions from the council, but I just would like to frame this because it's a big topic, and it's really broken into 3 distinct areas. That doesn't preclude anyone from asking questions of clarification on the overall topic, but the 3 distinct sections are the issue Stockbridge Almondral, how to address that in the proposal for the hybrid beacon on Stockbridge, the whole issue of the Selby Lane intersection and the proposal to move forward with the traffic light, and the 3rd issue has to do with the El Camino operational analysis that we approved in November and the proposal to suspend that. And so right now we'll just do questions of clarification.
Mike, first off, thanks for the great report and the good thinking outside the box. With regards to your comments on Almondrol, you said that it was the least traveled. Have we done actual counts of pedestrians at these different, or is it just a feeling, or what?
No, we have not done any counts, but it's just, our field observations, taking a look at it is a T intersection. Once you cross from the west side of ECR to the east side, basically you encounter a wall, and there really isn't any streets in proximity.
Right.
As opposed to at Stockbridge, there is a street almost opposite Stockbridge, and then there's commercial uses that could come
the
up.
only reason I ask it is I think all of us got a letter. I know I specifically did from the president of Lloyden Park Homeowners Association, and he was and I called him, and he was pretty adamant that he felt that this was an important crosswalk for them. He didn't obviously do an account either, but
This being Almondrol.
This is
yeah,
Dave
Almondrol.
Barker.
Yeah, Dave
Yeah.
Barker was the guy who wrote the letter.
Yeah.
And
Because
so
it's
I think we
getting-
need to take that seriously, because that is a very densely populated group, and I wouldn't want to dismiss, at least his input, out of hand, so.
Sure.
Comments or
Um,
questions?
So let's focus on question clarification, Elizabeth.
I have no questions, I have lots of comments.
Yeah. Questions? No?
Unclear?
Questions?
I do have a question about the operational analysis or operational study. You gave an estimate, a cost estimate on that, and I forgot off the top of my head what the range was. But can you tell me about how you made that cost estimate and how solid those numbers are?
Well, we received proposals, and how I developed that estimate is that since we didn't evaluate them, we did not open up their cost proposal.
Right.
But as part of their proposal submittal, we asked for a very detailed work plan with the number of hours. And so although I don't know exactly the hourly rate of each one of the three firms that proposed, I kind of took an average of what I believe are kind of average rates, and I applied them to the hours, and then that's how I came up with, the range of potential costs that's in your staff report.
I actually can't find it.
The 150,000.
150 was
It's 150,000. Okay, that's the
Okay.
estimate.
Did that answer your question? Question, so we went out with an RFP for the operational analysis, and we received 3 responses, but we haven't done anything with those, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so let me open it, if I hear no other questions, let's open it to the public for public comment.
Sure.
Would anybody like to make a comment on this?
Hi, my name is Dimitri Dimitralis. I'm living at 76 Rittenhouse in Lloyden Park, and I have not done a count either. However, I do recollect that the last casualty we had, a rather deadly one, was in Almondrol.
Yeah.
And if my aging memory, again, does not mistake me, we had another one about 5 years ago, also in the same intersection. Perhaps may have been 6 years ago. So I would say even with few count people crossing, losing 2 people in 5 or 6 years, I would say it's probably not a good thing for any of us to have to live through, right? Since all of us have young kids and stuff like that. So I want to congratulate you for taking the initiative to make El Camino Real safe. My family and I are crossing that very intersection, and sometimes Isabella one, on walks or bike rides across town. And I think all 5 of them deserve the same kind of attention, and I'm sure the Athertonians will be supportive of however you spend the money we collectively put into our pockets, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've remembered me. I've come here several times about Sylvie Lane, and I want to again say that I disagree with using a signal on Selby Lane. I don't see how the signal's going to help pedestrian safety walking along El Camino at all, but that's sort of another issue. As I said, I think part of the reason people get frustrated on El Camino is because it's so congested, because people are stopping. And I went on the internet today and measured the distance between 5th Avenue and Selby, and between Selby and Oakwood, and one is 1/10 of a mile and the other is 2/10 of a mile. So we're putting in 3 signals in less than 1/3 of a mile. People get frustrated, they're gonna run red lights, and when you run red lights, you have more accidents. So is it, you know, it may not work. How are you gonna integrate these signals? You know, are you gonna do the left turn off of Fifth Avenue? Is it gonna be through traffic, northbound, southbound? So it's not clear that people may not get backed up, be stuck on this. So I'm not convinced it's gonna help a lot. Again, it also encourages more traffic to go through Atherton. If I'm coming southbound on El Camino and I see all this backup, I'm gonna cut through Selby Lane and then go across and down to another street. If I'm coming northbound, I'm gonna cut across Almondral or Stockbridge and go over to Selby Lane because I don't wanna go through all these extra signals. So that's gonna put more traffic on our streets. And from my limited observation, there's a whole lot more pedestrians on Selby Lane and bicyclists on Selby Lane than there are on El Camino. And I could be wrong, but I almost never see a pedestrian on El Camino. And I see lots of them on Selby Lane. And if you've ever walked along Selby Lane, if someone's parked on it, you have to go out on the street. So you see a lot of school kids walking on the streets right next to cars because they have to get around. So I guess my basic concern is when you make your decision, you know, are you just shifting traffic problems onto Selby, causing pedestrian and bicycle accidents on Selby rather than El Camino? And are there better uses of our money that would come up with better pedestrian and traffic and bicycle safety than this signal? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Ken Wyburn. I live on Selby Lane as well. So I'm addressing the same issue, and I have the same ultimate sense about the traffic light. I do think every time we put a light in here, synchronization is difficult, and it especially with left turns. I think, frankly, the best thing you could do for safety at the Selby Lane intersection is to eliminate left turns in both directions, and accommodate that by allowing U-turns at the Fifth Avenue light and U-turns at the Oak, at the other light, so that people could make those U-turns and turn right onto Selby Lane if that's where they're going. I mean, we've got to face it, there's going to be a lot of traffic on Selby Lane because of the school, but I don't think we should do anything to encourage, and there's a lot of traffic on it just due to how bad Woodside Road is. There are a lot of people who cut through Selby Lane just to avoid Woodside Road. And why? Because Woodside Road backs up. The lights on Woodside Road are unsynchronized, and so people come through Selby Lane. But I don't think we should do anything which encourages more people to do that, because we've got the school traffic, which we can't really do anything about. We've got the school kids walking and biking on the lane, and if we encourage more traffic, we're just going to have more safety issues there. And the best thing we can do to keep people from going through the streets trying to go north and south is to make sure that traffic on El Camino moves. Because if we look at Menlo Park, it's frankly a horrible example. I never drive through El Camino through Menlo Park, even though I'm going to Palo Alto, because it's so bad going through Menlo Park on El Camino that I'd rather go the back streets. Maybe it's a little slower, maybe it's not, depending on what time of day it is, but the traffic is so bad there that I will simply not take El Camino through Menlo Park. If we make traffic move in through Atherton the way it moves through Menlo Park, we're going to have all that traffic. I mean, it's going to be there. We're not going to, people will only get out of their cars if transit or other means of transportation are faster than their cars. And so that traffic is gonna go somewhere, it's going north and south, it's gonna end up on our residential streets, and I don't think that's in our interest, and I think the light will be bad for both of those things. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, comments from the council?
Since I'm going to have to agree with the staff's recommendation in suspending the analysis on ECR. It doesn't make sense for us to spend $150,000 to create an analysis that do a reduction or potential reduction in lanes when Menlo Park is doing something completely different than that. It's the square peg round hole trick, and it just doesn't make sense to do that. I do think that the recommendations that staff has made related to intersections is actually a very viable way to try to make the safety for our pedestrians that are trying to cross ECR happen. I also agree with some of the comments, and I've had my share of telephone calls related to Selby Lane. I think that there's a two-pronged approach with Selby Lane. I think one, we still have to evaluate the left turn, right turn. I think that's still in the works. Maybe the hybrid beacon at Selby Lane, and address other safety issues, signage, crosswalks, and so on and so forth during the length of Selby Lane to try to help out kids that are trying to make it to the Selby Lane schools, because people that go to the Selby Lane schools actually try a different route to get into the school, so they're not necessarily making those lefts on Selby Lane now. They're going exactly what some of the residents here this evening said, another way to get in. It's like water. They're going to find another way, path of least resistance, and if it's unsafe for them, they feel, to make those turns, they'll go another route. As far as the intersection at Almondrol, I think that the fire department has got their teeth into that intersection, and I think that we'll probably be able to work with the fire department to come out with a solution for that intersection. Either a hybrid beacon that will flash red and will give them what they need, and also give us the ability to have a hybrid beacon there. And frankly, I think that what we contribute to the fire department, that should be an easy thing for them to find in their budget, as far as this town's concerned. So I think I've hit all those. We're good?
Just clarify for me, you talked about Almondrol, was that in lieu of Stockbridge, or was that in addition to Stockbridge, or?
Well, I think that in adding an additional hybrid beacon at Stockbridge, but again, do we have, we might have so many hybrid beacons going up El Camino. We really want to focus the traffic, pedestrian traffic as well, at the safest intersection. So, in directing like water, the same thing with our pedestrians, we want them to go to the safe intersections. I do have some concern with crossing at Almondrol into the opposite side. Mike had mentioned that it does go right into that very tall sound wall, and it just really isn't a comfortable spot for somebody ending up there. Then they're sitting on El Camino trying to make it away. So I know that intersection itself, with the fire department's contribution to it, and then Stockbridge, if we are considering Stockbridge, because Stockbridge is one street off Selby, so I think a resident, yeah. And we're gonna be hybrid beaconed up. My concern would be that we got so many hybrid beacons back to back, then people are gonna get desensitized, to so many hybrid beacons. Are they gonna stop? Are they gonna go, I'm gonna hit another hybrid beacon, floor it to get to the next one, but then that may be another problem. So if we space them out, or they're appropriately spaced out, then people won't get desensitized to the fact that we do have hybrid beacons. So, and adequate enforcement from the police department. So.
Okay, Bill?
So, I'm like Carrie, I think that we should suspend the study on El Camino at this point in time. If Menlo Park comes back with a surprise, we could always reopen it, but I do think that Almondrol is something that we need to address. If we can accommodate with a hybrid beacon, that's fine. Selby Lane, I think, is more important than Stockbridge because it's a safe route to schools. And we are talking about putting bike lanes and pedestrian traffic down there, and a hybrid beacon perhaps, if might be the answer. And I'm in favor of the other recommendations that you've made, but I think that handle the Almondral thing, but I also think that the fire department ought to be paying for it. The ones that came up with the idea to start with.
Yeah, first off, I think this is a really important topic, and it's one of the reasons I'm actually up here, and it's something I think is the kind of thing we should be talking about as a council, and I very much appreciate all the staff work that went into this, and it's a really good piece of work. I agree also that it's probably a good idea to at least stay the engineering consultant operational analysis that we're talking about at this point. There's just too much moving right now to go ahead and dive in and spend some money on that. And then if you look at and try to analyze the different proposals that are there, my thought is it's great that Caltrans is moving forward with hybrid beacons on Alejandra and Isabella. The spring of 2017 is a ways away from now, and I do feel that our sense of urgency should be greater than that. So I again applaud staff for looking for a way to try to accelerate some changes along El Camino to make it safer that are consistent with the Caltrans proposal. And to that end, then, if you look at, in my view, the issue regarding Selby Lane, I do think we need to be very careful dealing with the residents, make sure we understand what the neighborhood wants, and we properly, get a good handle on that, because people are raising legitimate issues and very good issues. Stockbridge, I would be more inclined to say we got to do something at Almondral than at Stockbridge, and there's a couple of reasons that I would put forward for that. One is that if we deal with Selby Lane, and if there's a possibility of a light or some sort of mechanism there is a lot going on within about 2 or 3 tenths of a mile right there, where there's potentially several stoplights or different mechanisms, traffic control mechanisms happening. And if you look at that stretch of road, my understanding is about 1.6 miles. It divides up pretty evenly, where if we put something at Almondral, it's at about the right spot. We then have some kind of traffic device, in this case it'd be the hybrid beacon, about every 2 or 3 tenths of a mile on that stretch, to end all the way down to Encinal. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, as well as having heard from some neighbors. That would be sort of my look at it. But the main thing I want to do is applaud staff for the work and say that I want to be as supportive as I can to keep a focus on this issue, not just El Camino, but I think the election wasn't that long ago that I went through, and the issue of traffic safety was a big one. And you heard some residents today talking about it. People were all volunteer how difficult it is to cross El Camino Real, and I think we should recognize that. And if we could do something to help that, would be a great accomplishment for us. So that's my mouthful. Thanks.
Great. Elizabeth?
Well, this has been one of my priorities for over 2 years, and Public Works Director Mike Kashwagi and I first met with Caltrans back in January 2013 to discuss how could we make El Camino safer for bike and peds, because we were experiencing a great deal of traffic incidences, and also we were about to embark on the town-wide bike and pedestrian master plan, and trying to figure out how we can make that safer. So through all of that, I think that's where the operational study came as an idea, to even study the idea of whether or not it would make El Camino safer to do lane reductions, or in order to make it a bike or ped lane on those side areas. Maybe keep the 3 lanes but narrow them down, or just make 4 lanes and the side lanes. Because coming out of Redwood City, I know most of Redwood City is 4 lanes coming in, and going into Menlo Park is 4 lanes. Now, Menlo Park is now about to finish their operational study, which is something similar to what we, in my mind, were about to do, and that's why we went out with an RFP, to do an operational study on El Camino Real. And it was my understanding that we were going to wait until Menlo Park received their results. And I understand now that it's going to be by May, right? I thought at one point it was going to be mid-February. but it's now May. And from what has been reported, the three things that they are considering is, one, to expand to three full traffic lanes each way, similar to ours, right? But the other two options that they're looking at is keeping the 4 lanes, 2 lanes each way, and making their third lane either, now correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, a class 1 bike lane with a landscaped median separating the traffic from that bike ped area for safety, and you make it more like a boulevard. Or what was the second one? The 2 traffic lanes with either a pedestrian friendly, your second option that you said. There were 3. You're trying to find your notes there? Well, I'll go on. But I just don't know why we don't wait until we get those results, because we don't live in a 1.6 mile isolation island. We live from Redwood City through Menlo Park into Palo Alto. We need to look at this in a very holistic approach. And I think that we need to work with our other cities in order to, so that what we do is going to be complementary or in conjunction with what they're doing, and conversely. So Selby Lane is also a very, very priority, and we've talked about this many, many years. Caltrans has wanted to put a stoplight there for many years. They've got the warrants to do it. I don't think that we've had enough public outreach. I don't think that council should make any decision at all until we first have tremendous public outreach, public awareness, public input, and other ideas other than just a stoplight. Part of our bike ped master plan is to put bike lanes and pedestrian lanes along Selby to help protect the children walking and biking to school. And that is in our bike ped master plan that we have approved and we're going to be rolling out. So that's something that has been at the top of our list to make that safer. The Almondral intersection with the front, that's brand new information to me just here right now with this agenda. I mean, we had not talked about that at all.
You mean the Almondral versus Stockbridge?
The Almondral, yes, right? The Almondral intersection with the fire, I had not had it. We have talked about the hybrid beacons at Isabella and Alejandra. I just want everybody to be very clear that it's not just one beacon. It is an array of beacons spanning 3 lanes, and it's a pole with
6 lanes.
Going one way, right? Each way. So there will be 3 beacons here, 3 beacons here, for each lane. And if we have one at Alejandra and then have one at Isabella, which really is only about a 1/10 of a mile away. I mean, it's like a block. They're just a block. And then another one, I tend to agree with Councilmember Wiest is that we're just going to clutter this up. And so we need, I think, to step back a little bit and look at what we're trying to do and achieve. On March 16th, the town is hosting, in connection with Menlo Park and Redwood City, and we're inviting the Redwood City Fire and Menlo Park Fire District to attend and speak, a public forum to look at a presentation that was given to the Grand Boulevard Initiative members back in November. And the county of San Mateo was so impressed with that presentation that they are sponsoring and funding that presentation for jurisdictions along the El Camino, because they want more people to hear this consultants, this traffic engineers analysis of, it's kind of like how we can make our streets safer, more inviting, in ways that we as lay people, I'm not a traffic consultant, I don't know, but it's new and interesting. information. And we're just putting that together as of last week, right? In connection with these, so it's brand new information, and we're gonna be publicizing it. We're hoping that the Almanac will do a piece on it, and we've got Menlo Park representatives and Redwood City mayors and representatives, and as the three groups here, we want to come together and understand that we have this traffic congestion coming out of Redwood City into Atherton, and then it's a speedway because we want to get through, because we're so frustrated coming from Redwood City, but we come to a screaming halt when we get into Menlo Park. So how can we, you know, work that together? So that's, my feeling, staff, you did a great job. Thinking outside the box, really wonderful information, great research, beautiful staff report. I would just like to continue this discussion until after a couple of things happen, until after we get, have this townwide meeting, the 3-city joint meeting, March 16th. And after we see what Menlo Park study has reveals to us and which direction they're leaning towards. Because if they're leaning towards, to me, if they're leaning towards creating a Class 1 bike lane in their third lane on either side, we need to do the same thing so that we can kind of merge into them. And then maybe we get Redwood City to do the same thing. I see lots of people walking and biking along El Camino. I live right at the corner of, well, Alejandra and El Camino. And there are so many opportunities for people to walk and bike, and there are so many staff people and workers that come into our town that are taking their lives in their hand all the time. So that's my comment, and I may have other ones later, but
Okay.
I took too much time, I'm so sorry.
Well, we are past my
I'm sorry.
target to get off this issue.
I apologize.
But let's face it, this is the most important issue on
Well,
the agenda.
and I'm very passionate about it because we've really been working on it, and you know,
you can come back and make further comment.
Thank you.
Don't you?
You could hook me anytime.
So I do think this is the most important issue on the agenda. And I do think that we need to be very careful, and I also think that we need to take action. We have a problem with El Camino. We all know it. It's a wide state highway, 6 lanes. People go very fast. We've had 39 injuries or fatalities in the last 14 years. 36 of those 39 injuries or fatalities occurred when people were attempting to cross the street. Only 3 of them occurred while people were going along the street. I do feel like we have a responsibility to look at this important state highway that is not managed by us, but is managed by Caltrans, to give our input on how to make it as safe as possible as one attempts to walk or ride a bike along it. But I also think that the most important focus for us is on the crosswalks, because that's where the accidents are happening. And this street divides our town. And we need to do everything that we can to enable the transfer of people across this town. And this is going to become increasingly important in the next 3 years, because we're going to build a new civic center that is going to be a draw to people to this side of El Camino Real. And I want to encourage that. So I think we have to look very seriously at every single one of these unprotected crossings. I strongly agree with the staff report that we do that. I voiced in November, when we considered and approved the operational study, that I thought that the most important thing that we should be looking at is not lane reduction, but is how to make the crossings as safe as we can. And at that point, if I recall, we decided to kind of restructure the proposed study into 2 phases. A first phase that was targeted to meet the Caltrans requirement for assessing whether or not it was wise to do lane reductions and what that would take. And that necessitated us looking at El Camino Real well beyond Atherton. I don't remember, I think it was Dumbarton to Oak Grove, but it was a much larger space that we needed to pay consultants to review than just Atherton in order to satisfy the Caltrans requirements. I personally felt the more important piece of that conversation and that proposed study was what was going to be phase 2. Because I'm not convinced that lane reduction is the answer. I'm interested in looking at creating safe spaces for pedestrians and cyclists to go along that road. Maybe we could do it by reducing the width of the lanes, and maybe that requires the same study, but I think that it's appropriate for us to first look at these unprotected intersections and figure out how we can best address those. And if that means, it sounds like we have pretty much unanimous agreement that we suspend this, the current RFP that we've got on the street. I would still like to get the information on the unprotected intersections. We haven't done a count on how many people cross. So let me address all three of the issues. In terms of the operational study, I guess I would prefer that we go forward with a study that focuses on what had been phase 2, which is get the data on the intersections and the crossings and how many people are crossing where, so we have hard data rather than just conjecture. And I think that could, and what the options are for those intersections.
Can I ask a quick
Go ahead.
just on that? Would it just be data on people crossing?
Yeah.
But wouldn't you also need data on how many cars are traversing? Because
I guess I'd defer to staff to make a proposal on that, to look at it and see what they think.
But they should also, when we talked about amending that, we not only talked about pedestrians, but we also talked about counting the bicyclists. And I think it would be worthwhile
Absolutely.
to know how many bicyclists, because there are quite a number of them.
Yeah.
Some of them are on the wrong side of the road, by the way. But there are quite a number of them going up and down, and there's more and more each day. So we should get that count.
and we want more and more to go each day, right?
So
on the proper side.
So it sounds like we want something, we want to gather some more data, which probably is to go out with a reduced scope RFP that just focuses on Atherton. We don't need to go beyond Atherton. This isn't for Caltrans. Let me go on and address the two other issues, and then we'll come back, because I know other people, you'll have more comments.
Okay.
So the second issue with respect to Alejandro and Stockbridge, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I think that Stockbridge is 1/10 of a mile from 5th Avenue. Almondral is exactly 3/10 of a mile from Fair Oaks and 3/10 of a mile from 5th Avenue. It makes lots more sense to me for us to focus on Almondral and not Stockbridge. I don't know what that means about the crosswalk at Stockbridge. I'm not proposing that we eliminate the crosswalk as staff proposed with respect to Almondral. I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. But I do think we should focus on Almondral. There are two thoughts I have about that. One is it's in the middle. It's also closer to the access to Lloyden Park. I suspect that that's more used by people in Lloyden Park than Stockbridge. The data that we get would help assess that. The other is we have a fire department. The only fire station in Atherton is on Almondral, and I know that they've considered wanting to put in some kind of a street light at Almondral. I don't know where they're at with that, but we have such great technology in this area that I just can't believe we can't figure out how to hook up a wireless connection to a pedestrian beacon that would wirelessly enable the fire department to initiate that beacon and create a red light, which is just what they want and just exactly what they should pay for. So whether they want to do that or not, we're going to have a discussion with them about taxes paid and services received by Atherton.
That's
And
another topic.
it is another topic, but I do think they should be open to economically contributing to this. The final thought I have on that is, Almondrell does dead end into the sound wall, but so does Isabella. And when when Caltrans puts in the hybrid beacon on Isabella, they won't, but we absolutely have to look at the connection from where that crosswalk ends once it goes across Isabella to Watkins, because people are gonna be crossing that street to go to the park. And we have to make that as safe as we can, whether that means putting some planting to separate it, to make a class 1 walkway, I don't know, but I'm just saying, the same thing is true where Almondrell ends. We have to look at the connection from where that crossing would end into how one would get into Lloyden Park. I think that's very important. Okay, then with respect to Selby Lane, I guess what I would like is staff to look at what the options are for Selby Lane. I do want to do an outreach program to the neighborhood. I think it's important that we reach out and talk to people to understand what the large number of people who live on particularly the west side of El Camino between Selby and Stockbridge think. And the last thing I want to do is push traffic onto Selby Lane. I think there's more options than just a street light. I don't want to say we want to put in a stoplight and therefore we're going to go talk to people. I want to say we want to create the safest intersection that we can, therefore we need to go talk to people. And it seems to me that the obvious options are a pedestrian beacon or a street light, but maybe there's other options. At one point I thought, well, we have such problems with left turns at Selby from El Camino that a roundabout would be perfect there. But I don't know how that works, because you gotta have crossings, and I'm sure we're not building a pedestrian bridge. So I just think we need to think out of the box about what the solutions could be for Selby Lane. I think it's a problematic intersection, and we need to figure out what to do there. And I'm not at all opposed to, I think we've actually explored the idea of eliminating left turn lanes, at least the left turn lane going east. And we couldn't get it through with Caltrans, so.
The county.
Oh, the county, okay.
Yeah, you have to push more.
So those are my thoughts. Any other comments?
Following up on the outreach from, regarding Selby, that's something that we've been talking about a long time. And we have 2 residents from Selby Lane here, 3 tonight, well, 2 residents. And so, it's of great importance to them. So, how can't we just maybe decide to start with that public outreach? We're gonna do a public outreach for this March 16th meeting. It's gonna be at Jennings Pavilion, 6 to 8 p.m. And so it's open to all the public. And so we're going to be doing an outreach for that. And maybe at that, we could have a sign-up sheet for Selby Lane, or have an adjunct, next study session or something with public specifically for the Selby Lane residents. I don't know.
Well, I guess I would like to have, and I don't know if we need to do a motion or not, to have staff craft an RFP for studying safety along the El Camino corridor, and in particular the crossings. So it's downsizing the operational study, but focused on gathering information, not just at the crossings, but focusing on the crossings that could be helpful to us in deciding what we can do. It could be a whole slew of things, including dealing with median and.
Well, I agree with you. I support that idea. Again, I think that, so what I've learned about this and safety crossing is that crossing fewer lanes is safer than crossing larger lanes, So if you have only 4 lanes to cross rather than 6 lanes to cross, or if you have a median in a bulb out in the median where you have a safe spot to land. Right now, our crosswalks, we have no real safe spot. I mean, there's all this traffic safety design that can create safe spots for pedestrians crossing. And that's just not dictated by the hybrid beacon, flashing lights. Everybody stops and somebody crosses over the 6 lanes. So that's kind of one solution, and it's kind of, in my mind, almost an old-fashioned solution. It's not the current thinking in traffic safety and traffic mitigation.
Perhaps, Mr. Mayor, I could help craft something to get one of the issues out of the way, the easiest one, in fact, Selby Lane, even though it might sound complicated.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But we know we need an outreach program.
Yeah.
We know we need some traffic data analysis on what's actually going on Selby, as well as at the intersection of Selby and ECR. That's gonna take some staff time and resources to go do that, whether we have a traffic engineer provide that analysis or not. So we can come back the next council meeting with what that scope of the outreach program would be, what the scope of the traffic data analysis for that intersection would be, and how we would outreach to the residents about all options associated with Selby Lane intersection with ECR.
Great. And can you also do a report then on the fire district, maybe put a little pressure on the fire district to,
No, this is just
Well,
Selby.
we're just
This is
looking
just
at
Selby.
Yeah, we're not on.
So if
Yeah.
that's okay with the council, we can do that and move that issue along.
So, obviously, I would hope this is our goal. Our goal is to keep people on El Camino Real, having them travel in a safe speed and travel in a manner that they make it through this town in a safe manner, and that our residents aren't affected by crossing east to west. So, with that being said, we should also note that we haven't been just sitting here. The police department has been doing a great job with the motor program, getting out there and
Yes.
doing enforcement. These things have to be in conjunction
Mhm.
with how we move forward. I'm having a little difficulty in my head, doing more studies, traffic, pedestrians, and and I'm not saying, I kind of want to see something happen, and I think that by laying out a proper layout of where we figure these intersections are appropriate, the intersection of Selby Lane, again, I think most of the residents and people on Appleton Avenue will say even today that as traffic does get laid up, guess what? People start making right. People are starting to go up to Alameda. The people on Selby Lane are not going to want a light that's going to go there that's going to create more traffic, and it's already a problem creating traffic. So I think that we've outlined a pretty good method of where these intersections should be spaced in hybrid beacons, and we have that in conjunction with the police department in doing enforcement. I mean, I think people are expecting that we can study forever. I mean,
But we haven't studied it all yet. That's the problem.
Well, I know, and I know that we have, what we're studying is now we're gonna, Mike has kind of mentioned it
I know,
as
but
far
we're
as
conjecturing.
we have to, you're right, we have to move forward in a manner that, the residents are expecting us to act.
So you wanna do something,
Oh, absolutely.
but what do you,
Well,
what
I
do
think
you
that we have a
propose?
decent layout from staff. I think that we need to push forward and keep moving forward with the fire department and, the
Okay,
Almond.
so right now,
That's not
we're
Selby.
taking the Selby Lane issue off the table based on the proposal.
But there are-
Is there something else you wanna do with Selby
But
Lane
there's
then?
another option we can also do restrictive right turns. We can do.
I understand,
Well,
but
that's what we wanna
that's what
study.
we
Right.
want staff to come to us with the options.
And I think that would be
Okay.
narrow the focus.
Right.
If we can study the length of.
Staff here has come to us with the option of a street light.
Right.
And we're saying, we don't wanna focus on a street light, we wanna see the whole potpourri of options for Selby Lane
Right.
and include that in a outreach program.
Yeah.
I mean,
Narrow the
from,
focus.
I've heard the same comments you've heard, which is people don't want a street light at Selby Lane.
Right.
But I wanna be
Something has
systematic
to be
about
done.
getting that data, so we know that it's more than just the residents that come before the council. I wanna have some kind of an outreach program to that section of the community. Maybe we're gonna hear it's 150 to 4
Right.
that don't want a street light, that's great.
But the
I wanna
outreach,
hear that.
the outreach program needs to include information on the bike lanes and pedestrian
Right.
pathways that we're putting down Selby.
yeah.
Because there needs, if we're going to make that investment, we
Mhm.
need to have a safe way for people to actually use that investment. So maybe it's not a traffic light, but a hybrid beacon, which is pedestrian so please make sure that as we're moving forward in that direction, it's the full program.
Agreements.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, we did.
all right.
So let's move on to the other two.
Okay, so we've directed staff,
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the other
Go ahead.
easier issue is the suspension of the operational study, and then maybe doing a narrowly focused study, just the traffic analysis along UCR.
If I can make a suggestion on that. What I heard the mayor say actually is more than just data collection at specific intersections. What I heard you say is really taking a look at the segment and what that scope of work looks like. I guess on that, I just want to remind the council is that is exactly what we submitted a grant for back on October 31st. We're still waiting to hear the outcome of that grant. We expect to hear that within the next month.
that's
But
right.
the whole purpose of that grant was to create a complete streets,
Yeah.
Look at that entire segment, a very a lot of community involvement, to get a very, a wide variety of stakeholders involved. Because the bottom line is we can, the town could come up with ideas, but it's on El Camino Real, and you're gonna need, there's a whole bunch of stakeholders that are gonna have other
There's
ideas.
fire
Let me just see, so does everybody, do
Yeah.
we have agreement, we just suspend this for now?
Yeah.
And we've
Yeah.
got a grant proposal out there, let's see what comes in, and then we'll
Right.
revisit this.
Yeah. And that was my understanding anyway, until at least Menlo Park got their
Right, which
results.
we'll hear because they're gonna
Right.
come in
It's
in the
gonna be
next
in May.
month or two.
Well, yeah, but they're
I mean,
gonna make a
it'd be-
decision in May.
I think it'd be
so-
foolish for us to
Great.
do anything.
Okay, so let's
before
agree, we're
that.
gonna suspend that for now.
So then the only other issue is moving a hybrid beacon along at our pace, not Caltrans's pace, for either Stockbridge or Almondrell.
I'm not sure that is the only thing, because I heard some
Yeah.
discussion today that I want to really see if we can clarify. It seems to me what we have is we have two intersections where Caltrans has said they're gonna move ahead, and the timeline is 2017.
Isabella and Alejandra.
Does everyone agree that is a good thing, we're not going to interfere with that in any way, that is our goal?
I just wanna make sure everybody knows what it's gonna look like, okay?
So let's clarify this,
Well,
Well, but I actually don't think that's on the agenda. I think that.
what it looks like, the hybrid beacons?
What's happening with Alejandra and Isabella isn't on the agenda.
Yeah, that's already in
It's
the
moving, it's moving forward.
It's in the, okay, well,
It's not really.
I heard some
I know.
discussion of the possibility of changing, of addressing that.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I feel very strongly she continue to move forward.
Okay,
I have that same understanding.
Okay, but what,
what about
What about
Almondrall?
yeah.
Almondrall versus
Almondrall and
Stockbridge.
Stockbridge.
Overall, I think the issue is, pressing on the fire department.
well, that's to make a decision to focus on Almondrell rather than Stockbridge.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that we should.
Yes,
That's where my
that's
focus
where,
would be.
that's where my
Yeah.
focus
Yeah,
would be,
because the
yes.
next
Well,
question
and
is
second,
what
to me, the issue of the
Yeah.
fire department is not.
So I think we have unanimity that we wanna focus on Almondrell, not Stockbridge. This
They
isn't
don't have
saying
the ability to.
take away this crosswalk at Stockbridge. This is just saying in terms of potentially putting another traffic control device, we should focus on Almondrell rather than Stockbridge.
Okay, and for that motion, we need direction that it's Almondrell and a motion to approve the RFP to issue the design.
So
Begin
moved.
the
So
design.
moved.
So
I'll
moved.
take one of those as a second.
I don't know.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, if we're investing and putting the RFP out, does that preclude the fire department from contributing?
No, that's just the design cost, the construction cost, we're gonna hammer all day.
Will we
Oh,
see
yeah.
the RFP before it goes out?
Sure.
It's in your packet today.
And it's
Or
for
it's in
hybrid
the packet
beacon,
today, but focus on Almondrell.
Yeah, and
Yes.
obviously the fire department will be in on
And
that.
then fire department
Right.
wants to change it to a light, then they would have to
Can-
invest in that.
can
If
we-
they wanna change it to a light or pay for preemption,
Yes.
we're gonna encourage their financial participation all along.
Got it.
Well,
Absolutely.
If I could just clarify one thing, there was a lot of discussion this evening about a hybrid beacon at Almondrall with the ability of the fire department to activate it.
Right.
I agree that from a technical standpoint, that's possible. I do not know, and I doubt that a hybrid beacon could be used in that manner.
Ah,
Okay, so, but the direction, the way the mayor said it earlier is to take a look at a traffic control device at Almondrall which to me then means either a hybrid beacon or a traffic signal.
Right.
Because both would provide that preemption for the fire department, both will provide a safe crossing for pedestrians across the street. Then we can use that as direction. And the RFP that's in your packet this evening is actually for a hybrid beacon at Stockbridge, but also for a traffic signal design. So
can you, I have a question, can you have a traffic signal that isn't, that's dark, but can be initiated by
A pedestrian.
a pedestrian?
yes, you can, and that's called a pedestrian signal. But at this location, you wouldn't be able to use that. And the reason why you wouldn't be able to is cars who are going on Almondral, who want to turn onto El Camino, they need a light.
Well, they don't have a light now.
Well, yeah, but you can't put a light that's just going to be dark and activated either by
If there was a hybrid beacon, they wouldn't be able to turn. They wouldn't be able to initiate it.
No.
Actually, you can. Hybrid beacon is a flashing yellow. As we all know from driver's education, more than a couple years ago.
Yeah, but that's only north and south. But that's only north and south. It's not.
Yeah, it's just on north and south. It doesn't stop the people coming out and turning. As long as they can safely do it.
But what Mike is saying
I
is,
thought a hybrid beacon actually becomes a
it
red
becomes
light.
red.
It does become red.
The point is, the RFP would be broader than simply say a hybrid beacon. It would be for a device, and depending on how the
I think that's
fire
fine.
department or others got
Yeah,
engaged,
because it
we'd
gives
look
us
at it.
options. It's not
I
that we're
agree.
choosing one or the other or making that decision.
Okay, I think,
Good.
Is there a
So-
priority maybe that might help me anyway? Is there a priority from the council that we would err on the side of preemption to allow the fire department in and out? If they're financially participating, that means the light goes in,
I think we
or
I think
discuss
that
with
that
the fire
discussion
department.
should be with the fire department.
Yeah, I think the
Yes.
fire
I think
department
that-
needs to have.
We want what really
Yeah.
works best for both parties.
for both,
Yeah.
okay.
But without them here at the table with us, we're
So
only
but if they say,
supposing.
we're not gonna financially participate,
Then we'll talk some more.
then we stop paying our taxes.
okay.
We're gonna have a
I-
conversation. I
Yeah.
think that addresses all the
Yeah.
issues on
Right.
this
Okay.
matter. Okay, let's move on. We're moving on next to the budget amendment, supplement for the park budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, microphone. Robert?
Oh, it's Mike's still. No, yeah.
No,
Yeah,
budget
this
amendment.
has
Oh,
Mike
the
up.
Park facilities. Okay.
So, Mayor, member,
Boy.
City Council. So this item seeks City Council approval to increase the existing park maintenance budget to fund the planned painting of the Jennings Pavilion in the main house at Homer Palmer Park. This is necessary since the $25,000 originally budgeted for this work was needed for emergency repairs as outlined in your council staff report. In addition, as outlined in your staff report, staff has also identified a need to remodel the kitchen in Jennings Pavilion. The estimated cost for this improvement is $50,000. So, and the reason that staff included this in the report, and the reason for the council to consider funding this improvement now rather than as part of your 2015-16 budget, is that there are benefits to completing all work in the pavilion at the same time to minimize the disruption and downtime for this rentable facility.
Okay, questions, clarification?
Just to ask much, yes, $50,000 in the kitchen. Is that, again, how solid is that now? Where did the number come from?
It was a swag from Steve based on what the kitchen looks like and what the estimate might come in at. Till we bid it, we won't know exactly what the cost is.
And just a question on scheduling, as far as scheduling this, Mike, do we have a window of opportunity to schedule the remodeling? I mean, downtime, no events?
Yes, Steve believes that if approved, that we can get this done prior, within this budget year.
Correct.
So, Catering by Dana, would they benefit, for the remodel if we do it earlier rather than waiting until after?
By remodel, you mean the kitchen?
Yep, remodeling the kitchen, yes. Catering by Dana.
They would have a benefit, but it's really in their fall season, that they would be able to rent it with the knowledge that the kitchen's done and caterers.
So
will
if we
use it.
waited until, July 1st and put it in that budget, then they could remodel July, August, and fall, you know,
It's
or,
just a timing thing, yeah.
well, it is a timing thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when's their busiest season? In the
Yeah.
summer, in the fall, in the summer? In the
For
fall?
for weddings, I think it's
Summer,
spring and summer, yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, I think that would be a consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding was that there were evening events already scheduled for May when we were looking at the event garden.
Mhm.
And so because of that, the event garden, it's been suggested by Steve, that the event garden move out to September because they could put a moratorium on events going on. So to me, you know, since we're really talking not to June, but having something done by the beginning of May, it might be a little compressed. And so I think the timing is really what's in question. Plus, a question I would have is that a while ago, well, the city manager reminded him, yeah, I took pictures of that kitchen, and in my mind, it needs to be updated as okay, seriously. However, at that time, a member of staff, not you, said caterers don't use the kitchen, they bring everything heated and they just have warming trays and they don't need it updated. Because I was pressing forward and they said, people said, no, we don't need to. So if in fact we definitely do need it and the caterers are saying we do want to use it, I'm all in favor of it because really it's a shame what we've got there. Anybody ever
It's
look back
a
there?
shambles. It's
Yes.
terrible. And no, really.
Yeah,
And-
it is.
And so I guess the question is whether or not we actually need a kitchen anymore
Period.
in
That's
our
the question.
current way of doing things. Because the kitchen, the way it used to be, you know, the dames would go in and cook up stuff for the tea and everything, or they would do this. I think what they need more than maybe a stove and everything is the refrigerator, freezer, prep areas,
We need a catering.
And warming.
a catering kitchen,
Catering.
yes,
That's-
warming,
that's
an
the
oven
plan.
that will, you know, you can put some spanakopita in there and cook it up, and
That's what the $50,000 is?
Yes, it's a
Yeah,
catering,
no.
to make it a catering kitchen.
that's what this is.
Yes.
It's not a big.
Not a home
Not a
kitchen.
chef's
Okay,
kitchen.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think we're past questions of clarification, so let me ask if there's any public comment on this item? Okay,
Wally, come on.
so,
Wally
Chef Ed.
Wally told me that he thought that we should put a kitchen in the back of the stadium.
We could grill some hot dogs.
that gets too close to a snack bar. Okay, so my question, really the only question, assuming that we need a catering kitchen, which I'm assuming, but I don't know, but my question is, well, can we get the work done less expensively if they were to do it after the fall season in the next budget, because you're in the winter period and there's not so much demand for contractors versus now when we're in the height of the season where there's great demand for contractors, and we all know that people are doing so much remodeling and building right now that the contractors' prices are high.
I don't think that there is a season for, you know, lower cost bids being in our area, like say September, October, because they build straight on through. We've got great weather in September, great weather in October.
So maybe it doesn't
I
matter.
don't think that, you know, approach is valid.
But the only issue is that with the event garden going to September, there would be a moratorium on some activities at the park, at the pavilion, in some cases.
Well, what's
large
being proposed
ones.
is not a moratorium, it's just an advisement that during this period of time, September to October, November, whenever they're gonna be under construction, there will be construction at the park.
So that will impact weddings, because they're gonna use that space between the main house and the pavilion, but it wouldn't impact somebody who's just gonna be inside the pavilion.
But you might wanna, if you're gonna have some sort of, well,
Well, you run into events that the dames put together for the holiday tea, for there's what else? There's something I think they do in October, that they use the pavilion for. Yeah, they're.
It could impact them if they're going inside and outside.
Yeah, well, there-
Yeah.
But, so if you're gonna inconvenience people or put a little asterisk, say, hey, we might have to cancel or be aware, you might wanna do it both at the same time. That would be my suggestion as opposed to doing one now and trying to rush it because May, June is when the weddings start, if I remember from the presentations, and rushing it, we may not make it.
I'm getting married in November, so I don't.
So, my input is two things. It's not a very big kitchen, and whoever's gonna do it is gonna bang it out. They're not gonna be there for a month.
I
And if
think
they
that's
are,
right.
we got the wrong person.
You're right, yes.
I think
So,
that's right.
and when we go to a prep kitchen, it's gonna be a completely different kitchen
Yeah.
than what we are currently used to, but I think that we ought to make sure that we get the right input, because we
It has to be
should
designed
make
for-
what we need,
Yeah.
not make what we dream in our head that we want in our house.
Right,
So I think
right.
that that's gonna be an important factor, and scheduling it
Yeah.
is just about getting it done. If it's this cycle or the next, I
Doesn't
think
matter.
it doesn't matter.
I agree.
I propose that we approve a mid-year budget amendment that includes the $50,000 for the kitchen.
Second.
And if staff decides that you don't wanna use it this year, you wanna do it next year, then we roll it over.
Good.
Or rebudget it.
Mike
Is
second.
it- Mike seconded.
All in
Mike
favor?
Mike,
I don't know why you're doing it.
Mike,
I do support that.
I'm gonna take that as a yes, Terry.
You're absolutely
Okay.
But they're gonna do-
We're
That's
moving
it.
on
We're
because
moving on.
we've got less than a half an hour here. Okay. Mid-year budget report. Robert,
Oh, boy.
Let's not make it too long. Yes.
7 slides.
Yes, it's 7 slides. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Today, before you have before you today is the mid-year budget review for the fiscal year 2014-15. So the recommendation is to receive and file the mid-year budget review for the general fund for fiscal year 14-15 and adopt a tax resolution authorizing a budget amendment for adjustments. As we progress through the mid-year, through the budget year, the staff continually reviews and make sure that programs and services, we ensure that they continue to maintain at the certain levels that we instituted at budget cycle. So this is the mid-year budget, as you have in your staff report, is a high-level view of revenues and expenditures for the general fund budget. So as was discussed, staff meets and makes internal adjustments as necessary to account for changing needs and priorities, taking into account anticipated expenditures for the remainder of the year within each respective line item. So overall, we take the council and budget priorities, they are maintained, and what we do is we go and make necessary adjustments to expenditure line items to ensure are accurate and appropriate funding for each department service are maintained. So with that being said, I'm gonna go through our PowerPoint presentation. Again, this is only 7 slides. So you have the staff report, and this is a synopsis of it. So our property tax revenues, we had a change in revenues of 227,000, which is a 3.3% increase in anticipated revenues. So brings up our revenue for property taxes, secured property taxes to 6.3 million. Initial budget was 6.1 million. So our property tax revenues are other, that was our secured property tax revenues, but we have other property tax revenues. And the categories are unsecured property tax, the SB 813, property tax in lieu of VLF, and the property transfer tax. So you can see there's minor adjustments, increases in those property tax. The SB 813 was an increase of 59,000. The property tax in lieu, an increase of 19,000, and the property transfer tax was increased about 50,000.
Which is a documentary transfer tax, not a real property transfer tax.
Right. Yeah, and the documentary transfer tax, it's we're allowed by the city. Every city can adopt this, and when they do adopt it, they're allowed to do it's 27.5 cents per $500 worth of value. And again, this is a document transfer tax on the property. So, that being said, property tax revenues have increased 4.3% overall. So that's a 330,000 increase. 220,000 of it is the secured property tax category.
So you see at the beginning of the fiscal year budget, our property taxes were at 7.7 million. With the changes, the 330,000 anticipated at 8.1 million. ERAF revenues. As you recall, ERAF, it's short for Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund. As you recall, during our budget cycle, it's becoming an unpredictable revenue source, and what that means is the state's continuing to look for ways to reallocate this source for its own budget purposes. So what we did in the fiscal year 14-15 operation budget, we said it's not dependent on ERAF. So we moved ERAF below the line in this 14-15 fiscal year budget. So we set up a policy that it would be used for reduction of long-term liabilities or one-time capital projects that were identified. And at the budget, we budgeted 700,000, and it's estimated this year to come in at 1.1 million. So with that being said, the fiscal year 13-14, we received 1,020,000 in ERAF, excess ERAF funds. So at the beginning of this fiscal year, we brought it to council. Council decided to make an allocation to our OPEB. So we did make an allocation to our OPEB trust. So we're expecting, even though we budgeted 700,000, 1.1 million is coming in this fiscal year. So staff is anticipating to make a recommendation to the council to make another contribution of about 680,000 to OPEB, and that would bring our allocation for OPEB, the OPEB trust, at 5 million. So currently we're at about 4.3 million and some change. So the 680,000 will bring us to a 5 million allocation to our OPEB trust,
Which would level us at all of our retirees that are currently retired funding.
Yes.
90% is rough.
90%.
Yeah.
Because
So-
we don't know how long.
And then,
Are we doing that now though, right?
No.
Because there's another 445,000,
Yes.
but we don't have to deal with that now.
No.
That'll be in the budget.
and then when we have another actuarial that OPEB may,
We'll get one every 2 years.
okay.
So we're making headway. One of the council's priorities was fiscal stability, and one was paying down long-term liabilities. So we've tackled the OPEB liabilities, and we made great headway in the last couple of years. And being at 5 million is a great kudos to the council in tackling that priority.
Take it, take it.
So our total revenues at the fiscal year 14-15 budget, we budgeted 11.6 million in revenues. With the changes, which comes out to 551,000 increase of projection in revenues, will bring us to our current revenue, projected revenue of 12.1 million. So that is a 4.75% overall increase. That, as we discussed earlier, 330,000 was the property tax category. The remaining 221,000 is due to other revenues within the general fund. So, as was mentioned, staff reviews and analyze operational projections for each department, and we kind of review level of services that are needed. And overall, our operating expenditures are within budget expectations, except for 2 categories. One was building, which was needed an overall increase of 38,000, and this was due to some overall net changes in the contract for town arborist and code enforcement, and also an increase in building expenditures due to the increase in building revenue. So it's a net, because increase in building revenue, as was described in the staff report, we have to adjust the contract life and business service expenditure account accordingly. So with that being said, it was net adjustment of 38,000 that we need as a budget adjustment. The public works, that 25,000 was what we just heard in the prior item, number 19, discussing the park improvements.
And that'll be 75 getting out there.
Yes. So now I got to start over and do this and present it next time.
Oh,
Just
good,
kidding.
I enjoy this so much.
Just give us the red one.
Can you go back, Teresa?
No.
I like 2 spots.
Are you serious?
I want
Yeah.
you to forward.
Oh,
Sorry, Robert.
no, she's not.
There
One
you
more.
go.
There you go. Okay. Sorry. It's good. See, when you have technical difficulties, I have backup. So, thank you, Teresa. So, what this means, here's the impact of the fund balance. So we have the beginning of the fiscal year fund balance was 10.4 million, as you saw it was in the financials. So 10.4 million of the general fund balance. Our projected general fund revenues is 13.6 million. That includes the 12.1 million adjustment of that 551,000, and then it includes the 372,000 for the parcel tax, and also the new projected of 1.1 million of ERAF. So that is all included in this 13.8 million in revenue. So that brings us to total available funds of 24 million. And then, as you recall, our fiscal year 14-15 expenditures original budget was 11.4 million. We made that OPEB contribution of $1,020,000, a budget amendment of Peak Democracy last month for 8,000, and what was discussed recently, the net mid-year adjustments of 63,000. All those added together brings our total operating expenditures to 12.5 million. So it brings us to 12.5 million for total expenditures, and our fiscal year projected 14-15 fund balance is now 11.5 million.
Less 50,000.
Less 50.
Yes, less 50,000 now. So now, based on the reserve calculations, we did mention that we're at 12.5 million now for our adjusted expenditures. So we have a reserve policy. We have a 15% emergency reserve policy, which against our 12.5 million expenditures is 1.8 million. We have a 20% contingency reserve stabilization. It's at 2.5 million. And we have a building operating reserve of 505,000. Those total reserve requirements are equals 4.8 million. Again, we've mentioned that right now our projected ending year fund balance will be 11.5 million minus the 50,000 just allocated for the park. So if you take those above reserves and you back them out of that 11.5 million, that gives us with a 6.6 million in unallocated general fund reserve. So what Mayor was just discussing earlier about the, we'll have about 444,000 available in ERAF is correct. Again, we're gonna have 1.1 million in ERAF funds. We're gonna come to council and make a recommendation to contribute 680,000 of those ERAF funds to OPEB. So that will leave us with about 444,000 and unallocated ERAF for other items, whether long-term liabilities or capital projects. And then the you back that out of our 6.6 million, so we would have a total unallocated general fund balance of 6.133 million.
Great.
So overall, the city's looking well. We're being very prudent and fiscally responsible with our expenditures, our level of service, and we're continuing to meet our budgeted priorities that council and staff has set. And as we get into the next budget year cycle, we'll continue to look and see what areas that we need to continue to maintain and new areas that we need to improve on.
Great.
That's my
Excellent presentation.
Excellent.
Questions of clarification?
When we look at the departmental spends, is there, an evaluation on the timing issues?
Oh, with payroll and
Yeah,
employees,
have we
yes.
done that?
Yes, we look at that, yes. When we do this mid-year, we do it as of December 31st, and our departments, we tell them to project out their total expenditures. In our finance department, we ended up projecting out payroll, benefits, and everything, and we take that into consideration, and we plug that in to our mid-year report, and we meet with the department heads and make sure that their operational expenditures, we provide them with what the salary and benefits would be, projecting it out, because we know all the the full burden benefits. We let them know what that will be, and then we meet with them on their operational expenditures. And then wherever any cost savings can be, whether within those departments, we look for that first.
Okay, because I remember when we put the budget together, I think we just said this is what the staffing levels we're hoping to get.
Right.
And we just put those in times the salary rate for those type of people.
Yes.
And we have some haven't been filled.
And some of them haven't been filled, yet there's no adjustments to those, so.
Correct. And because of that, we netted those adjustments. As you recall, there was only two departments that needed additional was building and public works. But police department, yes, they're in the process of staffing, so we netted those savings against to having to ask for additional appropriations.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are saving about 200,000 in OPEB liabilities because of the pay down last year. And so what is the anticipated savings with this current 600,000 OPEB?
680,000. We budgeted it when we did our new actuarial. We plugged that in just so we, just in hindsight, to see what it would look like. So it would be about 217,000 in savings in OPEB costs. So
including the
for the 1,020,000 or for the 680,000?
The 680 that we would recommend to the council. We plugged that into next year's. It's an actuarial report, but for next year's, it's in the 15-16 actuarial report. We did include that, knowing that could be a possibility.
So you'll as a follow-on to what the mayor asked, you'll anticipate that we'll get up to $5 million when you present the budget to us, starting next month, really, we start talking about it. But, so we'll have anticipated that we'll have made that.
Yes.
Okay, and then you'll make your recommendation as to what goes in the budget for OPEB. Okay, yes, thank you.
So I have two questions.
Yes.
I'm really surprised to hear that, if I heard you right, that our ARC gets reduced by 221,000 as a result of a 680,000 pay down?
No, with the 680, it's not the 220,000, but everything that we've contributed up to this point towards the trust,
right,
plus the 680,000, it nets between us a total of about approximately 217,000 as a whole.
And there's 5 million in that trust, so that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, the 680 doesn't give us 218,000.
Too, that adjusted it.
Yeah, no, I know. We just did that.
Yes.
We just looked at it as a finance committee. Okay, second question. You showed in the reserves a building operating reserve, which, is that a new reserve?
No, it's been a reserve that we've had and we've maintained ever since we went to contract building services. That reserve was established because of prior building permits that were outstanding and inspections. So that was set up for that.
I see. Okay. Okay. Where people may not claim them or something.
Well, that reserve is for when we brought back when we got into the contract with Interwest. That reserve was to anticipate to hold us over just in case once we went through our master fee schedule, because we didn't know where we are as far as charging for permits, if we're meeting our overhead cost to provide the service. And so that was established for that, and also because we were transitioning to a new contract, there was old permits that were already in the pipeline that needed to continue to be looked at and monitored. And so that reserve was intended for that.
So we look at that in the budget. The follow-up question is, do we still need it?
Yeah,
Roll it into the general.
And I assume that's a budget discussion.
Right. Yeah.
And that could be a budget discussion. If we don't need it, just it's another 500,000 towards.
But there'll have to be an evaluation on the permits that are currently outstanding or have been renewed, right?
It's the reason that we did it that way was because when you go in and get a building permit, you pay all your fees front loaded. And then when we transition from one system to the other, now person coming in goes, well, wait a minute, I'm doing all the inspections and all the work, but that other guy over there got paid for it. So how do we transition that? And so we came up with a formula at the time. But if we do it, for instance, if we wanted to change the vendor that's providing the service for us, we would have the same issue at that time as well.
So it's kind of nice to have.
It's a budget discussion.
Yep.
Okay, so let me open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
Couple minor questions.
The Measure A money, was that shown up there that you get every year, the 225,000?
No, this is just general fund, mid-year budget for the general fund.
So if you don't spend it, does it get to the general fund?
No. Measure A, we do spend it,
That was in-
it just only stays within the Measure A fund,
It's in the-
and that's a separate item, but it doesn't go into the general fund.
All right,
That was in the audit.
you know, I went to the JPB meeting, the Joint Powers Board, and South San Francisco is putting up $9 million of their own money, and they've raised, I want to say $29 million to do a complete redo of their station and get rid of their holdout problem that we have. So I guess I'm just saying, if you have some extra funds that you could push into the pot, then you might be surprised that the JPB may move on this holdout problem that we have here at our station. But that's my opinion, that's not fact. So, but I thought if you, with the reserves that you have, you might want to keep that in the back of your mind. The only other thing is, and I don't know if it's appropriate because I wasn't here earlier, I did want to make one comment about the El Camino. Is that appropriate?
Not right now. Maybe
It's all
after.
it's passed.
But
At the tail end?
maybe.
Maybe at the tail end on.
Items
Are we
not on the
almost there?
agenda. And the only reason that that's important is that
We've already
somebody
made a
might be
decision.
watching this and they watched that and then they turned it off, now they won't have the benefit of hearing this
Yeah.
comment. I mean, that's the theory behind it. It's pretty cut and dry, but it's
So the answer is
not a felony.
no.
Yeah.
Thank
It's at
you.
the pleasure
It's
of
not
the
a
mayor.
felony.
It's at the pleasure of the mayor.
That's the answer.
Okay, let me,
Maybe a clarification, city clerk whispered in my ear about, I think the 9 million from South San Francisco, that is grant money, they're not using it out of their general fund.
It's what kind of money?
Grant money,
From third parties?
yes, from I think MTC. Mhm.
All right, well, they were creative.
okay, well, let me bring this issue back to comments from council on the mid-year
I'm
budget
excited
proposal.
about it.
Not hearing any comments, do I have a motion?
Where receive and file, there's no motion.
There's a motion to approve the budget amendment of 38,000.
Oh,
Budget
I
amendment of
thought we already did that.
Yeah, there is a motion.
Clarify
that
the $50,000 delta that we talked about.
Yeah.
The $50,000 delta you did at the last item.
I have a motion to move the resolution with the adjustment of the
So moved.
25,000 to 75,000.
No, you already did a budget amendment during the park presentation item. So the only
Oh,
budget
is this-
amendment you need for this one is the 38,395.
I see.
Oh,
Gotcha.
38,
Gotcha,
so
gotcha.
moved.
That was me.
Oh, second.
I'll take that as a second.
Pardon me?
Doesn't a resolution in the book have a reference to the park adjustment that we just made? And if
Yeah.
so, wouldn't we need to revise that?
Yeah, I think.
That's my question.
It's just a reference to the prior item.
It's a whereas,
Yeah,
it's a
yes.
whereas, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Unanimous. We are moving to the last, well, second to last item, I guess, which is, up to Mike. Approval to advertise for an RFP
It's the,
for
MCD
the
contract.
MC contract.
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council, I don't have any additional information other than what's in your staff report. The primary item here is that we're seeking council direction regarding the continuation of contract maintenance services. Staff recommendation is to issue a request for proposal, which is included with your staff report. The other alternative, however, is provide staff direction to negotiate with our current provider, MCE.
Question, clarification?
This is the end of a 1-year extension, is that correct?
Yes.
And we didn't go out for RFP last year, or did we?
We did
No.
not.
But it's a 3-year one.
We've done 3 years and then we added a year.
That's right.
Right.
It's been 4 years since we went out.
So the first time we went out, how many proposals did we get?
Well, we had 3 proposals, but only one qualified proposal, because the other 2 proposals only proposed on park maintenance services,
That's
as
right.
opposed to the comprehensive
Okay,
services.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Do you have a question? Mike answered it, it's.
I've got comments, but.
Yeah, I understand.
Well,
No other
well,
questions?
if we went out for a proposal, do you think that there would be other companies out there now that we'd get more qualified responses?
That's hard to say. I can tell you that there are experiences. We have experience with another company in Southern California that is very similar to MCE and does similar services. Whether or not they would be interested in proposing up here, I do not know. And then there's also other companies who could propose. Their approach is a little bit different, though. They basically consider this a management contract, and they basically get a bunch of subcontractors to perform the work for them. So there are some cities who do contract maintenance who utilize those type of vendors as well.
Okay. No other questions, clarification? Any public comments on this issue? Bill?
First off, I think that, MCE's been doing a real good job. Our budget gets underrun regularly, and I think that, when we've asked them to up the ante in the park, they stepped up, and really, I think that the guys that they have working are showing a great loyalty to the town and are showing, acting as if they were employees, really. While I'd like price reviews and benchmarking to make sure that we're getting a good deal, I would be in favor of city manager going and perhaps negotiating some things that aren't in our contract, but would make sure that we are getting good service, which I think we are. But similar to the way Interwest stepped up to give us SLAs and things like that, if we could add some of those in there, which would be like, for example, expedited job orders get done in a certain amount of time, or all jobs will be done in a job completion period of time, span of time. And if we would agree a mechanism with them to do some sort of price review, which would we just be looking at what other towns are paying for certain types of service and make sure that we feel that we're in line with those. That gives us the comfort that we're spending the taxpayer dollars properly. And then lastly, the last couple times we've renewed it, we really haven't. They do have this very nice aspect in there where they donate some of their time, 1.5% of their time. Their contract value is done for charitable purposes, which are like hanging the lights on the library, or if we have a little town gathering, they bring out things like the backhoe and let the kids climb on it to a safe manner. But if we could up that ante as well a little bit, because we're starting to add more activities in the park and things like that, and we might need them to try and help us with that. So while I've been an advocate of going out and doing an RFP every time this thing comes up, I've come to get more comfortable with MCE personally, and I do like the guys that they have working on our project now. And if we were to actually go with somebody else, as I mentioned to George, I'd rather see, as opposed to an outsourced contract, to go to a facilities management contract with the people that are under MCEs that they brought on board, that they would transition to the new supplier. So we don't lose that key knowledge, et cetera. But that would be the worst case scenario. I just would like to see some SLAs, some price reviews, and maybe an improvement in the charity time, and if they make sure that they do something to keep the personnel that's on there, because the guys are doing a great job. So that's it. Thank you.
Other comments, Kerry?
I will, I'm gonna echo Mike. MC's been doing a great job. I think that, if George can have an opportunity to sit down and negotiate and find smaller terms, but I think that they're one of the best in the marketplace, and they've been providing us excellent service and staff, we haven't had any problems that we've been made aware of related to anybody, and if we did, they probably wouldn't be here anyways. So, I think that Councilman Whitmer has mentioned it. I think it's been a fantastic agreement. An extension is appropriate, and competitively, I don't want to break in somebody new while something's working. So.
I think generally, I think I'm where Bill probably was a while ago. Generally, I think RFPs are a cleaner way to go to ensure competition. I agree, by the way, that MCE's done a great job, and I don't want to waste everybody's time by going through an RFP if people are convinced about it. Because my question, or my thought would be, if we decide we're going to move ahead without an RFP, I want to be sure that there's something in there that does show that we are getting a competitive, price, and that we're taking good care of the taxpayer dollars. Because the potential for things to get off track when you're in effect sole sourcing some things is a problem. It's there. So I don't have a specific proposal on that, but if we proceed down that path, I'd like to see something that shows that we are indeed competitive. We've surveyed the market, as Bill referred to, or whatever we can do.
Okay.
Well, I'm concerned that if we go out for an RFP, that we're not gonna get, the responses for the ability to compare and have a competitive bidding process. So that's a concern to me. And it does, we've had them now for 4 years. This would be, and so if we negotiate with them and we feel comfortable with them, I would like to have it be a multi-year contract and not just a 1-year contract. I don't want to keep doing this and maybe we could get more, give them some more security. And aren't several of the employees of MCE right now, had they not been part of our staff before, I think, I recognize some of them. And so, it's nice that they have taken this ownership and feeling a pride in Atherton. So I think that's really important to maintain. I would like to see a higher level of maybe landscaping. I think the mayor has brought a few things to my attention, but I know that we're in process of planning on revamping a huge amount of our landscaping here in our civic center, but it's not going to be for another couple of years or so. But I don't know how that might play into it. Some flowers, color spots here and there. Curb appeal. Anyway.
Okay, well, I guess I share Mike's perspective that RFP's a cleaner way to go, and if it's competitive, you're gonna end up with a better arrangement for the town. I'm worried, though, given our experience from 4 years ago, that if we went out with an RFP and we got one response, which is MCE, that it would hurt our ability to negotiate. I don't know that it would, but I know that if I were the bidder, I knew I was the only one, then you're in a better position than if you're just your contractor wants to renegotiate with you. So given that we're all happy with MC, I'd rather not take that risk and authorize the city manager to renegotiate a longer term contract.
Yeah, I think a three-year contract, but with year-on-year pricing, would lock in the prices, but with an annual or every 18-month a price review, where they would have to come and sit down with you and with Mike and go over the prices and prove to you guys that it is a competitive thing, and if it's not, then that would factor into, it might have some sort of penalty clause or something like that. So, normally a benchmarking clause says that you can direct the vendor to institute the lower prices, or it gives you the right to terminate or something like that. So, but anyway, I think as opposed to going with a 1-year price book and then every year coming back and saying, okay, we'd like to re-up it, and then if they're happy, then they say, okay, we'll give you the same price, or we'll only raise it 5%. Get a year-on-year. not at 1 year with a CPI, but a year on year, so they have to be competitive with it. I think that would be the best for us. And it gives us.
Confirm with the city attorney just to make sure, are there any issues if we go out for 3 years, that would have been 7 years since we actually issued an RFP?
I wouldn't do 7 years.
What's important here is that it's an extension, not a new contract. Because if it's a new contract, you have to go out and redo it. And so if it's gonna be an extension, if you start changing these terms and provisions, and I'm them, I'm gonna say, I'm pretty sure there's not a whole lot of competition out there to measure against me. So, I mean, if we're telling them you got almost a sole source, you're putting the city manager in a pretty bad place to negotiate. My recommendation is you take the contract we have and extend it as far as you're comfortable extending it, and let the city manager negotiate as much as he can into it, but don't try to get too tricky and reinvent anything now. If you want to do that when you're changing, when you're going out with a new RFP, and then you can talk about, because that's going to take a study, you're going to have to find out these numbers, and I'm afraid that's going to be a real impact on staff. It's going to be difficult, especially right now when you're just negotiating, not creating a new thing. So my recommendation would be extend it, let the city manager negotiate as much as he can, and he's got to come back to you anyway. So,
Can I make a comment? So can I just ask a quick question? Because we're assuming that if we go out for an RFP, there's only going to be one person, one company that's going to respond, and then we will be at a disadvantage.
Right.
But when they respond, they're responding with their fee schedule, and they don't know that it's only going to be one. And so we don't negotiate at that point, right? Because they're responding with their proposal with a fee schedule. Is that right?
Because it is a proposal, they do provide a specific response, but there still are opportunities for the town to negotiate some of the terms, some of the scope of services.
Right.
Do you believe, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go
Do
ahead.
you believe we'd be at a competitive disadvantage in that negotiation if we went out for an RFP and there was one response versus if we simply contact them and seek an extension of the current agreement?
Boy, that's a tough question. I don't know.
I think what you might have a problem doing, as Mike has pointed out, there are several different ways that entities do this, and you might end up with oranges and apples, and now you're going to have to try and compare them, and that might not. If you like what you've got, you might get something different, and now you're locked into it for at least a year before you find out this isn't working as well as it used to work. So I mean, that's the real risk.
A little. I don't think that would. It's the same company making the proposal, but they're not going to propose something completely different.
No. If anybody else, if you went out with an RFP and the other proposers that Mike's aware of in Southern California do it differently, and they come in, they basically more like a management company, and it is different, and the responsiveness would be different.
But our RFP, defines the scope of work.
Sort of, but it does allow for some flexibility in terms, because remember, it's a proposal, it's not a bid, so it doesn't give exactly how you're going to do it, because you can't. You have to let them come in and tell you how they're going to provide the maintenance.
And they could come to get their price improved. They could say they're going to change out some of the personnel, which I think would be
hard to do. Yeah, detriment to us. Yeah,
So,
I agree with that. Well, then we wouldn't choose them.
So can we do a 3-year extension?
Yes.
And we can do, in the course of that extension, we can negotiate some term changes.
Yes.
and get year-on-year pricing in the 3 years.
You can.
Okay. So I think that'd be better if we did that way. Not with 3-year with a 1-year extension, just a flat 3-year.
Right.
We can always extend.
This is an action item, right? Right. Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We asked the city manager to negotiate some improvements and a 3-year extension to the MCE contract, citing the contractor's good working relationship with the city and fine workmanship.
And
Second.
a second from the vice mayor, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Council reports. Would anyone like to comment on their council report?
I have a question for Councilmember Widmer about his.
Yeah.
Because in the February 10th West Bay sanitation discussion, that the district has plans for which streets are being targeted for sewer improvements. That's throughout our town.
Some of it's throughout our town as well as Menlo Park, and I've donated.
Do we have a list?
Yeah,
of-
they've given us a list, and I've given it to George, and he's had, one of the city engineers was there participating in the technology meeting, and the important point there was that if we were gonna if they were gonna open the streets, they agreed that we could put a conduit in for us to put fiber at the time.
How many sewer lines do we have throughout town? It's my understanding that we don't have many.
There's lots of them on almost every street, and
Not on
they
mine.
have a plan. They have a plan that goes out to
Yours is the only
2020
street
straight.
that does.
Oh, these are,
Because you have a septic?
those are sewers, not storm sewers. These
No.
are.
Yeah, we're
Sewers.
sanitary.
Sewers.
You don't have it, we have
Sanitary.
issues.
Sorry. I think we do have one.
I'm pretty sure.
You know, you didn't.
I was interested in storm sewers because, you know, we have all this surface runoff.
Yeah.
That's a whole other issue.
That's
Any
a whole
other,
other
any
issue.
other comments on the council reports? I just wanna point out that there's a very significant attachment to the vice mayor's report. It looks very interesting.
Very colorful.
Very
Yes.
colorful.
It's a presentation that was given at the CMAC meeting, it's on the pavement condition index, which is pretty startling about the average pavement condition index, which we're very focused on. And if you look at where Atherton is in the ranking, Atherton is got the best pavement condition index of all of the county. Everybody is very jealous of us.
Well, in
So,
the state, actually.
oh,
we're the
actually,
top.
in the whole state?
Yeah, I think last year you brought a report that said that we were in the
Yeah.
top 5.
Well, and that throughout the state, we're like 7.8, I think I misread it, $7.3 billion underwater, but then they extrapolated it out for 25 years and to 2024, and it's like such a huge amount. We need $72 billion.
Right, it's an infrastructure.
$108 billion or something.
I actually, rather than the $108 billion, would like to draw everyone's attention to the photo of the pavement where the car is totally crushed along the.
That's a poor PCI.
That's definitely,
Okay,
all right.
I'm gonna take that there's no further comments on this. The next item on the agenda is future agenda items. Anybody have any comment? Well, I'll make a comment. The ad hoc telecommunications committee met this week and decided to ask the staff to schedule a study session on the deployment of a fiber network throughout Atherton, where we've done quite a bit of studying and we'll come to that study session with a presentation on some of those thoughts.
In May.
In May.
Perfect,
Perfect.
exciting.
Is there any final public comments?
Greg Conlon again at 43 Virginia. The only comment I wanted to make about El Camino was I spent a lot of time driving in Los Angeles. I spent 10,000 miles and never left the Los Angeles area. So I thought a lot about how you do a street properly because I was on it for so long. But my reaction, if you don't reduce the lanes, is to put a divider right down the middle and don't let anybody turn left off El Camino. All the way from Atherton Avenue down to Ensign. It solves all of your accident problems, all your pedestrian problems. The pedestrians are gonna have to figure out, they're gonna have to walk down the Menlo It's not yeah, is it Enslow, the Menlo,
To the
school?
stoplight at Menlo College.
Because
there?
it's mainly the college kids, so
Menlo
they wouldn't have a
College.
problem.
Yeah, that's
They'd have to go down the Enslow instead of crossing 2 blocks earlier. But I mean, and that's based on my thinking about it a lot as I drove around LA, what the right answer is. So I leave that with you for whatever it's worth.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great.
So, Bill, did you want to talk about this?
So, well, actually, the city manager is going to meet. This guy does farmers markets, and he contacted me and put him in touch with the city manager, or he's gonna come in, and it might be one of the opportunities that we have to have something at either the park or here, but it's just an activity.
There might be something that we might wanna bring to Park and Rec.
Right.
As a presentation for them to consider for recommendation.
Great. Great. So at 9:59 on 9:29.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd just like to note that the longest meeting of the year occurred last month. We adjourned at 10:34 and we will not adjourn past that point.
Oh,